Let's talk timing. The Senate is not in session. They have to pass the 2018 budget resolution possibly next week, but we still have to have conference committee and both chambers pass. When's the soonest that could happen? Because you're not going to release details of the bill until after that.
Yeah, Adam, that's right. So the pivot is when that conference report, the House Senate has agreed on a budget and given us that firm baseline for tax reform. We will go immediately after that, lay out what's called the chairman's mark. But what it means is the Ways and Means Committee comprehensive tax reform plan with all the details. Then we'll begin the markup in the committee and House action.
But the soonest that could happen would be the last week of October, first week of November?
Yeah, so I've learned a long time ago not to plot out the timing and how smoothly these things go, but that would be the perfect timing going forward.
I want to get to something that Liz just mentioned. The president's promise, he mentioned it, is going to say in his speech that when we repatriate the trillions of dollars that companies have overseas back into the United States, however the mechanism is, that the average family from that repatriation of tax profits would see an increase of about $4,000. Where does that figure come from? Is that an accurate figure?
So I haven't talked to the president about that or the White House. Here's what I know. So if we lower tax rates so people keep more of what they earn, if we make America competitive, lower those rates for our local businesses so they can compete and win anywhere in the world, if we allow our companies to bring the earnings when they compete and win back to be reinvested in the United States, you do all those things, increase productivity, wages will go up. And we have seen economic studies that show a family of four can achieve those types of pay raises if we can get this economy going.
I'm glad you brought up family of four. Gary Cohn, the advisor to the president, actually said that tax reform, as the outline has been unveiled to us, would put about $1,000 back into the pocket of a family of four, average family of four. Now, far be it from me to say that's not a lot of money, but it works out to about $19 a week for the average family. Is that enough, $19 a week, to deliver comprehensive tax reform to the average American?
So here's what I know. We have a couple of big goals here. One, we want people to keep more of what they earn. That's the tax cut side. We want to dramatically simplify the code. So, no more special breaks for some and headaches for the others. We want to get the economy going, which means raising your paycheck. Awfully helpful for that middle class family. And by making America competitive, unlocking local businesses, more job opportunities. So what I know is done right, as we've seen in the Kennedy cuts, John F. Kennedy cuts and the Reagan reforms, you can create a lot more in that family budget than there is today.
But when you talk about that family of four, a tax policy center has said that people who earn between $150,000 to $300,000 a year, they could be caught here with the repeal of the deduction for state and local taxes. Now, Representative Collins, a Republican from New York, has said that leadership has promised him that a full-out total repeal won't be included. What is he talking about? What are you guys negotiating?
Well, here's what I know. That if we lower the tax rates and redesign this code, that we can deliver tax relief for families, whether they are in a high tax state or a low tax state. That is exactly what we're driven toward. We are visiting with lawmakers from those high tax states to make sure we hit that goal, exchanging ideas and on how we do that. But bottom line today, this mess of a tax code double taxes most Americans for that deduction. Taxes them once at the local level, taxes them with a higher federal tax rate, just so some can write it off. And so what we have today is, in the current code, double taxation at its worst.
Well, what I hear you saying then is that an argument to keep the deduction for state and local taxes, because even Susan Collins on the Senate side from Maine, not a wealthy state, says, repealing the deduction, she's got constituents who would lose the ability to write off their auto tax, their excise tax, and she's worried about that.
Well, she hasn't seen the final details of the tax reform plan and where those cuts are, how it hits that middle-income family, and more. So I always ask each lawmaker, why don't we work together on those details, lay out that plan, and then be able to go to that calculator, work through those numbers, and see that we have a choice. We can keep tax rates for families high and keep those deducted. We can do exactly what we do today. Or we can lower the tax rates for everybody and they just pay their own local taxes.
I want to come back to SALT and the state and local tax deduction, but since you bring up rates, we know the rates that have been proposed, but where would the cutoff be for the income brackets? That's something else that hasn't been announced.
That's the key thing. That's why things like analysis by tax policy centers and others just have no credibility because they don't know yet the size of the child tax credit, where those income brackets hit, what other factors lower those rates for middle-class families. So those are the factors we're working through right now as we finalize tax reform.
You know where those brackets would be roughly. So let me ask you. I mean, if you lower, as a citizen of the United States, my tax rate, but you increase the amount of income I have that's subject to that tax, it's essentially a wash. Where's my break?
Well, it would be, except that we double standard deductions, so we protect more of those first dollars you earn. We lower those rates at every level. We increase the child tax credit, make it more available to more Americans, all of which drive those rates down. And don't forget that those people who are in those high tax states, at every level, when we take the 10% bracket to 0, the 15% bracket down to 12, they get a tax cut at every one of those levels. So at the end of the day, look at the final design, apply it to your family. I think you're going to see we get tax relief. That's before the wages and that growth kicks in.
So I know Liz Clayman is dying to get in on this, so I'm going to turn it over to Liz. She wants to ask you a couple questions there. Liz?
Hi, Congressman. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just listening to this conversation about brackets. I'm dying to know, what do Republicans consider wealthy, as in that so-called fourth tax bracket, where they would have to maybe pay more? What is that, 1 million, 5 million? I've heard all kinds of numbers.
So I don't want to get ahead of the committee. Here, Liz, here's our whole goal. We want to deliver very strong middle-class tax cuts. We also want to make sure that people get a tax relief regardless of where they live. So no decision has been made on, in effect, a fifth bracket, because 0 is the first one. And no decision has been made on where that would apply, those brackets hit. So that's the work the committee continues to do. That's what we'll lay out for the world to see and to weigh after the budget's done.